They gave me a mentor who kept taking credit for my work and said things like, "It's better this way. They'll respect it more coming from me." I let him run with it, watched him present my model to the executive team. Then I raised my hand, smiled, and said, "Funny, that's my code, line for line." He froze as the CTO turned to him and said, "When I got hired at this company, it felt like a big deal. I was in my mid 20s, and this was the best job I'd landed so far. Decent salary, benefits, and I was finally working in the field I cared about, back-end systems and infrastructure. During onboarding, they told me they had a mentorship system for junior devs. I thought that meant real support, someone to show me the ropes, give honest feedback, and help me grow. That's how I met Rick. He was about 10 years older than me. Clean cut, confident, always wore the company hoodie like a badge. He had this calm, slightly smug way of talking that made everything sound like a lecture, even casual conversations. At first, I thought it was just his personality. I figured maybe it was nerves or that I was just reading too much into it. The first time he introduced me to the rest of the team, he called me his mentee and said I'd be shadowing him for a while. I didn't mind. I was new, and I wanted to learn. But pretty quickly, it became clear that Rick didn't teach, he assigned. He'd say things like, "Try drafting something for this part," or "See if you can fix this bug." I'd do the work, he'd look it over, maybe clean up a few lines, and then push it under his name. If we were presenting to anyone else, he'd do the talking. I'd sit quietly. He'd mention me if someone asked, but it always felt like an afterthought. I told myself it was normal. I was new. Maybe this was part of proving myself. I didn't want to sound ungrateful. One time I built a workflow automation for a recurring database task. It wasn't huge, but it was efficient. Rick took it and demoed it in a team meeting. He didn't change a thing, not even the stupid little comments I wrote for myself. He just said, "Here's what I came up with over the weekend," and everyone clapped. I pulled him aside after and asked why he didn't mention I built it. He said, "You're still learning. Don't worry, we'll both benefit from this. Trust me, it's better this way. They'll respect it more coming from me." I didn't know what to say. I felt small, like I should be thanking him for even using my work. That same phrase, "they'll respect it more coming from me," started to show up again and again. Anytime I asked why he didn't credit me, or why he rewrote my README and slapped his name on it, or why he answered questions in stand-ups like I wasn't even on the project. Over time, I stopped asking. I started documenting everything, but quietly. Every ticket I touched, every file I contributed to, every solution I came up with that he repackaged in meetings. 6 months in, I was burnt out, not from the work, but from the silence, from watching someone take credit for the things I spent nights building, from seeing his name pop up in performance reviews as a high-output contributor. The last straw was a predictive modeling tool. We had this legacy system that was causing delays in the reporting pipeline, and upper management wanted it fixed. Fast. Rick was given the lead, but of course he handed the core of it, the data engine, to me. He said, "You've got a good handle on this. Take a crack at it." I knew what that meant. I'd build it, he'd present it, and he'd get the credit. So I built it, carefully. I didn't cut corners, but I did something else. I personalized it. I used variable names I always used. I wrote functions in the same way I always did. I left inline comments that referenced very specific internal jokes, things only someone who worked with me closely would notice. I also kept the entire Git commit history in my own private repo, time-stamped, annotated, and untouched. Every line of logic, mine. Every decision, mine. I waited. 2 weeks later, there was a big meeting with the executive team. Even the CTO was going to be there. Rick was excited. He kept saying things like, "This is going to be a game changer." I nodded, said nothing. When we got into the meeting, Rick ran the whole thing. Slides, demos, talking points, all stuff I had either written or built, word for word. He even used one of my internal notes as a bullet point, like it was his own insight. I felt something in me snap. I waited until he got to the part where he explained the logic of the model. That's when I raised my hand. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just said, "That's my code, line for line." The room got very quiet. Rick looked like he didn't understand what I meant. He stammered something. The CTO looked at both of us and asked him, "Is that true?" Rick tried to spin it, said it was collaborative, said we all contributed. I didn't say anything. I just opened my laptop and showed the commit logs. Names, timestamps, screenshots, all of it. That was the moment everything shifted. They asked Rick to step out of the room. He looked like he was about to say something, but no words came out. He just left, and I just sat there, heart pounding, not knowing what would happen next. After that meeting, things got quiet. Too quiet. No one said anything to me directly for a few days. I kept my head down and did my job. I didn't know if I'd made a mistake by speaking up. I kept replaying the moment in my head. What if I overstepped? What if the CTO thought I was being dramatic? What if they were just waiting to get rid of both of us quietly? Then, out of nowhere, I got an invite to a meeting with HR and the director of engineering. It wasn't marked urgent, but it felt heavy. I didn't sleep the night before. In the meeting, they told me they'd reviewed the codebase and the project history. They confirmed that the engine was mine, that my work had been consistent and solid. They said they appreciated me bringing it to their attention. Then they told me Rick would be transitioning to a different role. I asked what that meant. They just said he won't be leading projects moving forward. That should have felt like a win, but it didn't. It felt unfinished. He was still with the company, still collecting a paycheck, still going to walk into rooms and spin stories about what happened. And I knew Rick. He wasn't going to just let it go. The tension didn't go away. It just changed shape. A week later, I started noticing weird things. Tasks I had completed were reopened with vague comments like needs revision or not aligned with current standards. Tickets I had closed were reassigned without warning. In meetings, people looked at me differently, some supportive, some cold. Then someone from another team forwarded me an email by mistake. It was Rick sending a message to his buddy in DevOps. He said I'd thrown him under the bus and wasn't a team player. He said I was riding high off one success and was too immature for real collaboration. The kind of email that wasn't direct sabotage, but planted seeds. Quiet poison. I didn't respond. I didn't confront him. I just saved it, like everything else. Then my code started breaking, not majorly, but little things. Variables renamed. Configs overwritten. Commit histories altered. It was small enough that anyone could call it user error, but I knew what I was looking at. Silent sabotage. I spoke to my manager. She listened but seemed unsure. "There's no proof," she said, "and if we start accusing people, it could get messy." So I did the one thing I knew how to do. I documented everything. I pulled logs. I kept copies. I started backing up my repos on my own devices every single day. I set up alerts for silent changes. I even left harmless bait in some scripts just to see if someone would touch them. They did. Meanwhile, Rick was still there, still smiling in the kitchen, acting like nothing happened. I'd see him talking to people and then see those same people act distant toward me. He was poisoning the well, quietly, patiently, like someone waiting to wear me down. Then, during a sprint review, something strange happened. A project I hadn't touched in months, one Rick had last committed to, was flagged for a serious logic error. The model was producing skewed results, completely off. The director asked who had built the core logic. Rick, without skipping a beat, said that was her code. He tried to pin it on me. I didn't even react. I just pulled up the repo history again. It showed the logic was altered after I left the project. I screenshotted the before and after. Names, timestamps, side by side. There was a long silence. The room felt colder than usual. After that meeting, I realized this wasn't over. He wasn't just trying to protect his ego. He was trying to ruin mine. Quietly, systematically. He wanted to discredit me before I could rise any higher. He didn't want to take my job. He wanted to make me quit, but I wasn't going to. I stopped hoping HR would fix it. I stopped thinking being right was enough. Now, I was going to build my case line by line until I had everything I needed, and I was going to make sure that when he finally fell, it wasn't going to be quiet. About 3 weeks after that sprint review, I got pulled into a meeting I wasn't expecting. This time, it wasn't with my manager or HR. It was with the CTO, directly. He asked me to sit. Then he asked me how things had been going since the last meeting. I told the truth, carefully, that I was trying to focus, but things weren't exactly calm. That I'd been cleaning up messes that weren't mine. That I felt someone was actively working against me. He listened without interrupting. Then he told me something I didn't see coming. Rick had applied for an internal transfer to a different team in a different department. Not demotion, a sidestep, the kind of move someone makes when they're trying to escape a spotlight they don't want anymore. But here's the twist. The new manager he'd applied to work under, it was someone I had worked with before, a project manager named Eli. We weren't close, but Eli had quietly been watching the whole situation from the sidelines. The CTO said Eli had flagged Rick's application. He had questions, serious ones. That's when the CTO asked me if I still had the documents I'd mentioned, the logs, the backups, the code history. I told him I did. I'd been keeping it all. Every screenshot, every commit log, every weird config change, every timestamp. I even had the email Rick had sent about me behind my back. He nodded slowly and said, "Send it to me. All of it." I sent the files that night. Not just the ones proving the original theft. I included everything. The sabotage attempts, the changed variables, the bait scripts, the whisper campaign. The whole pattern, quiet, careful, and real. I didn't hear anything for a week. Then came another twist. A junior dev on Rick's new team, the one he was trying to join, reached out to me privately. She said, "You don't know me, but I thought you should see this." She forwarded me a Slack message Rick had sent her, trying to warn her about me. He told her I was unstable, prone to drama, and always looking for someone to blame. She said it didn't sit right with her. She'd heard other people praise my work. She decided to check the version histories herself and saw that what he said didn't add up. More people started coming forward, quietly, one by one. One dev said Rick had taken over his work during a migration project 2 years earlier and claimed it as his own. Another said Rick had blocked her from pushing to prod during a client launch because she wasn't ready, even though she'd built the whole back end. A product designer said Rick had thrown out her user flow maps in a meeting, then redrawn them days later and claimed them as his revised idea. All these people had stayed quiet. Some had left the company. Some were still there but had gone silent. I wasn't the first. I was just the first one to push back. I started piecing it all together, not just what Rick did to me, but to others. It became clear this wasn't personal. It was a pattern. Years of it, covered up by charm and positioning and the kind of face you wear in meetings when people are watching. And then the final twist came. The CTO called me again. This time he wasn't alone. HR was there. So was Eli and someone from legal. They told me Rick had submitted a formal complaint against me, said I was slandering him, creating a hostile environment, that I'd been spreading lies and damaging his chances of promotion. That's when I pulled out my final card. I had installed monitoring scripts on the affected repos, totally legal, fully disclosed in the commit notes. I had clean logs of when and how the code had been changed, who touched it, when it broke, and when it was silently reversed after my changes were altered. Then I showed them the private Slack message Rick sent trying to discredit me, and a second one where he admitted, in his own words, that he just needed to get ahead of the story before I could frame him. Nobody said a word after that, not even Rick, because yes, they had brought him into the room. They wanted to hear both sides at once. He looked at me, red in the face, breathing heavy, but said nothing. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was bigger, and it wasn't over yet. The meeting ended quietly. Nobody yelled. Nobody cried. But the silence said everything. Rick left the room without looking at anyone. He knew. A few hours later, the company sent out a memo, organizational changes. Most people ignored it. Those of us who knew, we didn't. Rick was gone. Officially resigned. No goodbye email. No final meeting. Just gone. HR didn't say much to me afterward. They never do. That's how companies are. But my manager pulled me aside. She apologized, not in a rehearsed way, in a real way. She said she believed me now, said she wished she'd stepped in sooner, said she didn't know it had gone so far. I nodded. I didn't say much. I wasn't looking for speech. I just wanted to be able to work again without someone standing behind me waiting to gut my name. After Rick left, things shifted. Slowly, people started talking to me again. Not all at once. Some still kept their distance, unsure. But others came up and quietly said, "Good job." That took guts. We needed that. One of the junior devs, the one Rick messaged to trash me, asked if I'd help her with a side project. She said, "I want to learn from someone who actually teaches." I got promoted 2 months later. Not with a party. Just a quiet email, new title, higher pay. They asked me to help rebuild the mentorship program, for real this time. I said yes, but only if it came with real guidelines and actual oversight. I didn't want anyone else going through what I did. I also started documenting the changes, not for revenge, for protection, for the next person. I left notes, templates, feedback trackers. I built invisibility. Every contribution tracked and logged. Every credit clearly shown. Open by default. 3 months later, I got invited to speak at a cross-department leadership session. The topic was trust and ownership in engineering teams. They didn't tell me what to say. They didn't need to. I stood in front of a room full of managers and engineers and told them what happened. Not in anger, just facts. I said, "This is what happens when you let someone take credit without question. This is what happens when your systems only reward loud voices and not real work." Some people shifted in their seats. Some took notes. 1 or 2 looked away. That was enough for me. Rick's name didn't come up again. But months later, I heard through someone in IT that his reference had been flagged. Quietly, internally. When a hiring manager from another firm called to ask about his time with us, they were told, "We are unable to recommend him for rehire." That's all it took. He didn't get the new job. Last I heard, he was freelancing, struggling to land contracts. One former coworker said he saw Rick at a networking event trying to pitch a tool, something very close to the predictive engine I built. They said nobody was listening. They were too busy talking to someone else. That someone else was me. I won't say I feel sorry for him. I don't. He built his career on other people's work. He thought charm was a strategy. He thought silence meant agreement. He thought nobody would stand up because nobody had. Until I did. I didn't destroy him. I just showed people who he already was. And that was enough. I gotta stay. I got my name back. I got my work recognized. And now when someone tells me it's better this way, I tell them no, it's not. It's better the right way.